Well, I knew that in India, we were going to build wireless systems, at least for defense. Even I could not foresee that it will become such a commercial and such a common thing in everybody's hands in the form of cell phones. It's- Cell phones itself hadn't been invented at that time, just
We're
about
still talking mid 80s in some way.
early 80s.
Early
In fact,
80s.
America had come up with the cell phone system, but it was very nascent, and GSM hadn't yet happened, and so on. So I said, okay, I'll work in. So I told him, look, for my postdoc, I want to go to a place where I can do wireless communication, which I had only learnt as a subject. I hadn't worked on. Fortunately, because of his past, having worked in many of these things, he actually connected me to a mentor in Bell Labs who liked people who switched fields. He had some thing about that. So he said, I like your idea, so you come. So I joined this group, and it was actually a continuation of learning, because he told me, you do whatever you want. You learn, you work with any groups. There were 3 or 4 different teams that were working there on different things. He says, you can choose and move from one to the other. And he gave me complete freedom to learn. So I actually worked 6 months at a time with each of those groups and learned completely new aspects of wireless communications from them, including what later on became packet communication, Wi-Fi, and so on. The beginnings of Wi-Fi was happening in that group at that time. There was no name for it, but and I did all that in 6-month packets, 6-month chunks, about 18 months. Then I wanted to come back. So actually, I wanted a 2-year plan, but I came back after 18 months, and I got into IIT Madras as a visiting faculty member and waited for the advertisement to get regularized. And that's how I came here. And after I came here, I plunged into teaching, because my former teacher who introduced me to these subjects was teaching alone. There was no faculty member who was teaching these subjects. So he said, now that you have come back, let's do it together. So the two of us, went hammer and tongs, and we used to teach 2 courses every semester, non-stop. I was, and from a menu of about 8 or 10 courses that we used to alternate. And that's how we were both teaching for almost 10 years.
This was a time when even landline telephony had not penetrated
Very
India.
little was there in India. And I wanted to, there was no question of actually using wireless for telephony was not even thought of, except police and so on. And then in 88, I remember very clearly, a gentleman who had taken over as the telecom was still completely in as a government department.
Okay.
There was no BSNL also. It was all DOT. And research was also done only in DOT at that time, whatever research was done. And he actually became the head of that research center, and he came to, he was an alumnus of Institute of Science. He came to all the IITs and IISc, and he said, I want to sponsor research in your institution. The first, for them, it was a big move, to actually do something outside of their department. And he said, I'm willing to support. And it was in the faculty meeting, and he came, and I put up my hand, and I said, I want to build something. I'd never built anything in my life. Even in Bell Labs, it was just another academic type of environment. And he said, okay, and this idea was beginning that you could use wireless to actually, as part of the telecom network, not even to go to the subscriber, to actually between exchanges. And we wanted to build a digital system of that kind. And he actually funded it fairly generously at that time. For a young assistant professor, for a funding to an academic institution, which they were not doing till then, going back and looking at the value of the rupee at that time, it was a very, very big project. I don't know how he gave it to me. I had no credentials to on doing anything like that. So we started building stuff, learning how to build through that project. It actually worked. In 1992, we deployed, it worked. Then we transferred. It was in modern terminology, the TRL level that we worked was something like 5. We handed it over to CDOT, and CDOT took it all the way to 8 or 9, and then handed it to ITI. By the time it came to that stage, cellular technology had burst into the thing. So it was clear that what we had done was going to die. Then in the meantime, based on what we did, actually an American company, an MNC, approached us saying that we make chips, we want somebody to make a system, we'll fund you, will you do it? So actually the very next project, which was a wireless local loop, which is actually using wireless to go to the home, was conceived by us and was funded completely by an American company. It was not funded by government. At that time, for an IIT to get a funding of $250,000 to start with, ultimately it went up to $1 million completely from outside, was quite unheard of. It also gave us the freedom to, we knew we couldn't do it just with faculty and students. So we actually got some of some of the people who had worked on the earlier project and even some other projects before that, Professor Junjunwala and I, together, we had teamed up. So his projects also. We actually called some of them had joined CDOT, and there were very few avenues for employment in those days. So we told them, look, would you like to start a company? Because the American company that funded us, Analog Devices, was willing to fund part of the money to a startup. The word startup was not known, but so these students of ours, former students, formed a company, and part of the funding went to them. Part of the funding came to IIT. But we all worked in IIT in one place. So whatever is now considered very common, which is have a startup, work with startup and so on, we did that without having that terminology. Of course, the faculty, there was no policy of allowing faculty to be part of the startup in those days. So we had nothing to do with the company. And even the money didn't go through IIT. But we were able to get those kind of trained people, professional people into the effort. And that wireless local loop technology was commercialized, was deployed globally, actually, about 1.5 million lines in all, including about half in India. Then, of course, at this time when we developed this system, we actually had engineers building things, commercial level grade products and so on. Cell phones were still appeared to be expensive devices meant only for those who need it and can afford it. At that time, even incoming calls used to be charged in the cell phones.
Sure.
It was not what it is today. But then it became clear that due to Moore's law, cell phones will become actually cheaper than landlines and would actually replace landlines. And our technology, wireless technology, was actually a lower cost and faster deployable, in a much faster fashion technology, wireless technology to replace landlines. But it was still fixed phones in homes and offices. This one allows you to carry your phone wherever you went. So we knew that would take over. So that technology also sunsetted. And so this is how if you ask about me, I sort of took quite a few decisions which could have gone either way. I left an area which became very important later. MP3 and all have become the mainstay. But at that time, I felt it was not something that is going to take off, or at least require the kind of resources that we would not have in India and so on. I never anticipated the coming of the desktop, and then the fact that you can have such a powerful computing device in your palm. None of this I anticipated. So what I thought was not going to be feasible or not going to be useful or not going to be feasible in India actually turned out to be completely the opposite. So I left that area. Of course, I still know it well, but I left it and I got into wireless.